Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the year. This is my 2019 NHL Draft rankings. Now, this is not a mock draft. This is my rankings, which means that these are the top 10 players, in my opinion, who are in the draft. If I had to rank these guys based off of where I personally think they are, this is how it would go. Again, this is not a mock draft. This is not where I believe they're going to go. This is just where I believe they are in terms of their skill. It's a long video, folks, so let's start things off here with our number 10 selection. I have Alex Newhook as the 10th best player in this draft. Newhook is a below-averagely sized center who's very quick on his feet, very offensively skilled, and who posted 102 points in 53 games for the Victoria Grizzlies in the BCHL. He's not playing in the best league in the world, but throughout the past year he's certainly shown off his skills and his strengths in this league. This year he had the most assists and the most points amongst all BCHLers, and in a season that was really similar to Tyson Jost a few years ago, he's certainly making headlines. In my opinion, the ceiling for Newhook lies in a first-line 1B, highly offensively skilled center, a guy who could really drive the play, who can set up guys like there's no tomorrow, and who's quick on his feet. Worst case scenario, I believe Newhook ends up as a top 9 guy who could provide a really good sense of speed and agility throughout a team's bottom 6. Going over to our number 9 spot, I have Cole Caufield. Now, this is the third video on my channel which I've talked about Caufield. He's already broken the goal records set by Phil Kessel and the like in the U.S. National Team Development Program. He is literally the best goal scorer that program has ever seen, and the fact that he is only 5'7" is the reason he is not as highly touted as he could be. But in my opinion, we've seen it with the Brincat. Cole Caufield is a guy who could come into the league, and in my opinion, at his ceiling, will be able to post up 40, maybe even 50 goal seasons at a time. Caufield is the most pure goal scorer in the draft, and as a guy who's known for being able to put the puck in any situation, in my opinion, he's at number 9 here. At his ceiling, I believe Caufield is a Maurice Richard candidate, potentially winner. At his floor, I believe Caufield is a guy who could probably make a bottom 6 impact, getting a few really nice sniping goals here and there. But overall, I think that the likelihood that Caufield translates his goal-scoring ability is a bit more guaranteed than him not being able to translate, because he's so good at scoring goals, and we're just seeing it with DeBrincat right now. It's one scenario, I know, but I see good things coming out of Caufield. Going over to our number 8 spot, we're sticking over with the U.S. National Team Development Program. I have Matthew Boldy as our number 8. Boldy is the perfect player. And by that, I mean he doesn't do anything wrong. That is the consensus that I've seen with scouting reports online and other scouting opinions that are valued in the community. Boldy is a Swiss Army knife, he's described by many. A guy who could play very well at a high level in the offensive, defensive, and neutral zones. He is a player who can basically do everything because he's got all the tools and the right mindset to being able to play a game that most people would call flawless. He can put up points, he can backcheck, he can set up guys, he can score goals, he can do the dirty work in the corners and on the half boards, he can break out pass, he can send things back. He's a very competent left wing player. Now, he's not the most offensively talented player, but he's certainly one who could tango with the best, seeing as his time with Jack Hughes and Trevor Zegras and the rest of the US NTDP. Despite not having the most points out of all of those guys, he's still, in my opinion, one of the safest picks amongst all of them just because of how polished his game is. If you want more on Boldy, you can check out Maroki on defense and his scouting video. It's fantastically done. I highly recommend you watch it. It's really long, and it's really gosh darn good. Going over to number 7, we have ourselves Peyton Krebs, a guy who is also a left-wing player, but a guy whose engine is unmatched in this draft. Krebs is the most hard-working player out of this entire class of players, and it's really showcased on the ice just how passionate he is about the game of hockey. Despite playing on one of the worst teams the WHL has seen in years, Krebs is always out there in all 3 zones, giving it 120%. He's always going, he's always out there quickly, he's got really good offensive talents, but His effort is unmatched. He capped things off at just over a point per game in the WHL this year, but that's because he was playing on a weak team. Other than that though, in my opinion, Krebs' ceiling lies as a really sustainable top 6 left winger who could play top line minutes and who will really provide a ton of energy and skill in a team's top 6. Krebs to me maxes out as a 60-70-ish point guy. At his floor, he's a bottom 6 guy who could definitely provide that same energy and whose presence will certainly be appreciated by whichever team drafts him. Going over to number 6, I have Dylan Cozens, the big 6'3" right-handed center right winger from the Lethbridge Hurricanes, from the Yukon Territories. Dylan Cozens is a beast out there. He's a big guy who knows how to use his size and his speed to his advantage. He's very fast, and he's very strong on the puck out there. He's described by many as a workhorse, and overall his game is very complete already. He's a fearless player with a pretty good shot too. He finished things off with 34 goals in 68 games, 84 total points. Dylan Cozens is a guy who, in my opinion, could pan out to become a first-line player who can really drive his way to the net, do things with the puck, and beat guys out endlessly because he's got the talent to do that. At his worst in a floor scenario, I believe Cozens probably maxes out as a good top 9 guy who'd be hard to get around and who would assert effort into every shift he plays. Going over to number 5, I have Trevor Zegras. When I think about Trevor Zegras, I think about 2 things. I think about puck skills and agility, because those are the 2 things that Zegras excels at the most. As one of those highly offensively talented players playing for the US NTDP, Zegras has really shown off his skills against USHL competition and against NCAA competition. He's mostly a playmaker, but he can score some goals here and there. His game, though, is mostly rounded out by his fantastic vision and passing ability and his shiftiness, because he's really agile and he can really go where he wants to go with the puck. He can do this because his skating is also pretty good too. In my opinion, Zegras maxes out as a 65-point center, a guy who's a second-line center on some NHL teams, and a first-line player on some of the lower-tier teams. At his floor, I believe Zegras could probably translate as a bottom 6 guy who could pull off a really nifty pass once in a while. Looking ahead to our number 4 spot, I have Alex Turcotte. Turcotte is described by Cam Robinson as being a coach's dream. This is because Turcotte is kind of a hybrid between Cozens and Zegras. Now that's how I put it. I know some people might disagree with that, but hear me out. Despite only being 5'11", Turcotte is a guy who's really hard to knock off the puck. He understands the game at a different level than most, being able to observe and absorb what's going on the ice and make the appropriate plays necessary. By this, I also mean that his two-way game is excellent. Some people are calling Turcotte's two-way game the best in the draft. And his season this year was really, really short. Turcotte was riddled with injuries to start things off, which is why ending things off, he only has 30 games played for the U.S. National Team Development Program thus far. Turcotte's status as a coach's dream is invigorated by his play, by his two-way ability, and by his fantastic offensive strengths as well. Turcotte is as good as any other US NTDP player in terms of putting up points and putting the puck in the net. His vision and passing skills are incredible, and I know that's kind of a common theme amongst the 3 top centers of the US NTDP, but hear me out, Turcotte's is really good too. And on top of that, his shot is pretty good as well. In my opinion, Turcotte could max out as a potentially first-line elite offensive machine in the NHL, capable of putting upwards of 70 points in a season. That's where I see his ceiling. You guys could probably disagree, but hey, I think Turcotte has such a strong showing here for being one of the best players in this draft. The offensive skill and the two-way game, it's all there in Turcotte. Going over to number 3, we have ourselves the best defenseman in the draft, not Cam York, Bowen Byram. If you're a fan of my channel and you're from Vancouver, you know who Bowen Byram is. He's everywhere. He's all over the radio, all over the TV. Everybody talks about Byram because he is just so gosh darn good. He got himself 71 points in 67 WHL games this year, one of the highest scoring defensemen in the league, at 17 years old by the way. Byram is an incredible two-way defender who could set things up on the power play, who can really provide that defensive stability, and a guy who, in my opinion, could really be challenging for a top 3 spot as best defender in the league 7 years from now. And that's incredible praise from a guy like me. You got guys like Dahlin, Hughes, Makar, Heiskanen. I think Byram is in that boat. Now, I'm not saying he's Dahlin. If he was Dahlin, he'd probably go first. But Byram is a guy, to me, who is in that conversation. He's so creative, and he's so safe with the puck on his stick. Byram is just a reliable defender, and a guy who could certainly fulfill a top 2 role in the NHL one day. I think the guarantee for Byram to reach his ceiling, it's very high. And there's a reason why I have him as 3rd. I know some people have him as 4 or 5, but to me, Byram is just so good, and he's so guaranteed to be good too, that he deserves the top spot here. And now we head over to number 2 and number 1. Let's just do our honorable mentions here because we know who's going to be in these 2 spots. Honorable mentions to Vasily Podkolzin, Bobby Brink, Victor Soderstrom, Arthur Kaliev, and Kirby Dach. Now going over to number 2, I have Kaapo Kakko. Now, Kakko is a guy who has that star power. He could have gone first overall this year. He could have gone first overall in 2017. He could have gone first overall in 2014. He could have gone first overall in 2012. Kaapo Kakko is an incredibly gifted power forward player whose style and finesse is able to translate into great goal scoring and defensive abilities out there on the ice. Kaapo Kakko is a guy who was a fantastic consolation prize to any team picking 2nd overall if, the first team didn't take Kakko. But to me, Kakko has such a strong showing for being a high-quality NHL player, but in my opinion, the ceiling for Jack Hughes is just all that much higher. Today, I would say that Kakko is the better player, but in 10 years, I'd say that Hughes has more potential. Which is why I have Jack Hughes at number 1, the guy who's the shifty, Patrick Kane-like playmaking center, the guy whose skating ability is number 1 in the draft, and whose offensive visioning and IQ beats out his other teammates, like Turcotte, like Zegras in my opinion, and the guy who could really just make a showing for being one of the shiftiest, most creative playmakers in the league come 5 years down the line. Jack Hughes is a guy who maxes out with no ceiling because he's a guy who could just keep on getting better as the years go on. I could totally see him developing into a 90, maybe even 100-point player in the NHL, especially with how the league is turning out today, with more guys getting more points over and over again. Jack Hughes is incredible, and to me, he's number 1. So there you have it, folks. That is my 2019 draft rankings for March 31st. Some of these guys are in the playoffs, most of them, their seasons have already concluded, so now I'm giving out my rankings as to how good I believe these guys are going to be, and I just gave my list out. If you guys disagree, feel free to comment, call me out on what I'm wrong about, call me out on why my rankings are whack. I'm really open to all that. I'm looking forward to a great discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed this video tour plus and the Charles I on gaming, and bye.